I'd put you in my pocket, push the button through the hole to lock it. Hold on to you, you're like a treasure. Walk across my hand, it'd be a pleasure. You could come with me. You could come with me. Oh, you're such a sweet little misfit. When your smile falls down, I wanna lift it. Wanna make you better. Wanna run away together.
Hi.
Hi.
Wow, that was a great start for my voice. This is
Oh,
going great.
it's a preview. Man,
Yes.
we are going to Vega, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for your voice, and I'm sure all the listeners will be as well as well.
As they have to listen to this.
No, it really it's like that episode of Friends where Phoebe has like her voice gets a little raspy because she's sick, and then like she leans into it and she be like gets this whole like new like bar singer persona, and it works really well for her.
Well, unfortunately, as we discovered yesterday when we watched 1776, singing is not a thing that I am yet able to do. But it'll come. That's why I keep telling myself it'll come.
It will come. It will come.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited to kick back and do a little podcasting because it has been my entire day has been emails, just emails, and it has been nerve-wracking and it's been annoying, and don't let anybody tell you that I don't think anybody is telling anybody that the freelance art critic YouTuber, educator, Instagrammer life is a simple one. It is not. It is filled with
Yeah.
a lot of I am my own assistant, I am my own office manager, I am my own accountant, even though my actual accountant would probably rather I am not. Yeah, it's much more than a full-time job. So
Yes.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember when I did tour directing as an independent contractor, and there was a lot I really loved about it. But there were definitely a lot of days spent just like sending a million emails,
Yeah.
reminding people that I existed
Yeah.
while they made their schedules for the next season.
You know, yeah, for now, at least for the foreseeable future, for a very long time into the foreseeable future, I can't see living any other way. I love like being able to determine what projects I take on and what projects I don't take on, and I love not being at risk for like one day my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, do you want to like design an ad for this new weight loss drug?" And I have to say yes. Like I still wouldn't have it any other way for now. But yeah, these are the we kind of have to. It's kind of good to pack all the unglamorous stuff into like one day sometimes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, this is the day. It is, and that was definitely today. There's going to be a lot of begging people for money soon, and we're getting the ball rolling on that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm in the unglamorous part of the season too. It's like
yeah.
this is the busiest month,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Philadelphia, because we always have a lot of people here for the. Oh, I just knocked a thing over. A lot of people over here for the 4th of July.
Yeah.
So it's just busy. There was just extra like anxiety because Moms for Liberty was in town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, they're if people don't know, you should look them up on the SPLC.
Yes, that is the place to look them up. Absolutely. Uh-huh.
I believe they call them an extremist group on there.
Yeah. They're really intense. They're really intense. They are not your average. I was going to say turf, but turf would obviously not describe them at all.
No.
They are very Nazi-esque, you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, at least in what is written down on their
Yeah.
documentation and all of
so,
that stuff.
according to their words, right? This is not a casual Joe Biden's a fascist or something like that. No, this is like they say they're fascists. We're gonna say they're fascists as well.
Yeah,
yeah.
Whatever individual members might say, if you go to their website, that's what's there. So,
yep.
It ended up not being that big of a thing, but it just was like this added anxiety.
Yeah.
So I didn't plan it this way, but we're actually going to be talking about a religious extremist today.
Awesome. Oh, you know
Yay.
what? Yay. Fantastic.
On that, I guess this is your content warning, listeners. If you have like trauma around evangelical Christianity and things like that, this might not be the episode for you.
Yeah. Unless you're in the mood.
Yeah.
But if you're not in the mood, consider this your content warning.
Yes. No offense taken if you're like, I cannot today.
Yeah.
So my house is so noisy right now. I'm sorry. It's like the dog next door. Good. The dog next door is like having an existential crisis.
Oh no.
The dishwasher's running, which I know gets picked up by the mic. You might not be able to hear it, but I will in editing later.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We're here. We're gonna make it happen.
I have silenced the main noise in my house, which is Pikachu. He has quite the pair of lungs. And so he got a very early dinner tonight.
Yeah,
so
my
that he
baby's
has not become a guest.
Early dinner too.
Yeah. The things we have to do, again, world of freelancing. Yeah. Sometimes you have to feed your pets early. And do they have to deal with it?
But if people tell all their friends to listen to Delicious of History, I might be able to afford a better recording space.
Absolutely.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Jack Chick.
Okay.
And
yes,
I came up with this it was like a month ago or something. I was in York, Pennsylvania, celebrating a friend of mine completing their conversion to Judaism.
Mazel tov to them.
Yeah.
Welcome, friend.
And we stayed at a hotel, and in the elevator was a chick tract, which is definitely something I have interacted with before. Mm-hmm. When I was like in college, I remember there were people who would sit outside the student center and they would like tape chick tracts to Pop-Tarts.
Oh my gosh. Don't ruin a perfectly good Pop-Tart that way.
Yeah. Well, we always had a good time reading them because most of my friends were Catholic. And as we will find out, Jack Chick was not a fan.
N-O-T, a Catholic. Yeah. What can you tell me again? Tell those that don't know, what are these chick tracts?
What are chick tracts?
Because I believe I was handed one the other day.
You probably were. And chick tract is like a what's the word? It's like calling face tissue Kleenex. Like there's more than one type out there.
Got it.
There is something clicky in your background. There might be nothing you can do about it.
I think it's the rain.
Oh, yep. Then there's.
Does it sound like rain?
It could. Now that you say that sounds right.
I unfortunately cannot stop it. That one I can't do.
Have you not gotten your Jewish weather control upgrade yet?
No, I haven't. I'm still waiting for it. I will say, on a charming note, that the rain did come at the actual perfect time for the first time in my life. I put my new plants in pots.
Ooh.
And then immediately as I was finishing the last one, it started getting rained on, and I was like, yeah, party, because that means I don't have to take them inside and water them and stuff. This is like the perfect time. So I'm just watching them. They look super cute. And welcome plant babies.
So chick tracts are a brand of these little comic books that evangelical Christians will leave places or hand to you in an attempt to save your soul for Jesus or whatever.
For sure.
And they have a certain like style to them and a certain, I'm struggling to find the word, like sort of they have a certain vibe to them. And I think it also depends on where you are. So like I never interacted with these until I went to college in Ohio. And then I received quite a number of them. My wife used to get these in her Halloween bags when she'd go trick-or-treating in Georgia. So it's definitely when you're around that sort of brand of Christian. And they tend to have these really bizarre names. Like I just Googled like Chick Tract and I'm on their website. And it's stuff like where we go. The Accidents, which is when a priceless carpet is permanently stained, its owner learns that only Jesus's blood can remove the stain of sin.
Now, we all know that you cannot use blood to remove other blood.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
This is incorrect.
Yes. Also, the one that asks the question, are Roman Catholics Christians?
Oh no.
So this is the vibe of the Chick Tract.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of offshoots of the Chick Tract.
Okay.
Anybody who's worked in the service industry or any industry where you get tips is familiar with the fake dollar bill. That is in fact a religious tract. So he's the person you get to thank for that. As we go through this info, I want to say that the information I found on him was not generally from sources that I loved. So just to give people an idea of where it's coming from, because usually I'm fine, just be like, it was good sources, trust me. This time it's like, these are not good sources. So a lot of his life events were pulled from an LA Mag obituary, which was the best source I found. So big props to LA Mag, because
thanks LA Mag.
I was struggling. And another source that was really helpful, but I have some just questions about, is christiancomicsinternational.org.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Got some information from my normal places, like academic articles and books, especially The Age of Evangelism, America's Born Again Years by Stephen P. Miller for like the larger trends. And weirdly, the LA PBS affiliate, KCET, had a ton of really cool articles about like, evangelicism in Los Angeles.
PBS always comes through for me recently. I shout out to PBS. I love you.
Yeah. So
I really do.
And I also, of course, got some of this from Chick.com, Jack Chick's publishing company. And just to give you an idea of just the vibe.
Okay.
The first sentence of his authorized biography is, Jack Chick was a real man. Oh. He always worked hard. He tried to do the responsible thing even before he became a Christian.
Oh,
gosh. But he was still an unsaved man. For me to tell this part of the story, you need to know a little more about what Jack was like by his own admission before he was saved.
Okay.
This is where we're living today.
That's where we are. All right.
So he was born April 13th, 1924 in Los Angeles, California. He was artistic. Apparently, he performed poorly in early grade school because he spent so much time drawing airplanes instead of doing his work.
Okay.
He was also a theater kid.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yep.
This checks out. Okay.
After high school, he received a scholarship to the Pasadena Playhouse School of Theater. And a lot of the sources from like evangelical sites and stuff made a lot of hay about the fact that he really loved to curse.
Okay.
And just based on just based on like watching like Fundy Snark YouTube videos and like Shiny Happy People and stuff, and just general existing, you can't study American history without coming across evangelicals periodically. This seems to me to be like, there's got to be some bad thing that pushes you to be a Christian. Like your life before can't be good because
you have to be saved from something.
Right. Or kind of like in some 12-step groups. I know they're not all like this, but some 12-step groups, it's like you've got to have your rock bottom moment. Even if you didn't. Even if you just woke up one day and said, you know what, I want to change this. Like they want you to have a rock bottom moment. Like I said, I know not every group's like that.
No, but
I get the emails.
I mean, that totally just reminds me of like basically a ton of like Christian influencers who talk about like their shameful sexual past. It's always like, you know, I had sex before this time, or, you know, at the worst version of that being like talking about how they, you know, like had and like they were, I'm trying to think of, I'm thinking of like yeah, they were assaulted or something, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
were, you know, and then how that was like a part of their quote unquote shameful past, so they're like impure or something, and like using
Yeah.
that as like a content kind of thing,
Yeah.
to be like, that's where I'm coming from, and like, you know, I have to, and it's just, and so yeah, I that makes a lot of sense, that, and that focusing on cursing is like such a, I mean, it's such a benign one.
Right. And I
Yeah.
realized part of that is I grew up in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
So like I grew up around a lot of cursing and it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem important to me.
Yeah.
My boss the other day actually gave me a hard time. I cursed in his office. I curse at work all the time when I'm not in front of guests. And he just goes, "Wait, you curse?" And I was like,
Yes.
"Shut the fuck up." You know I curse. So do you. We all curse. We're
We
in the
all
tourism
do.
we're in the tourism industry. It's stressful, we're cussing. So apparently Jack Chick cursed a lot.
Okay. Okay.
He was enlisted or drafted. I found reference to both,
Okay.
but I tend to believe enlisted because that's what the LA Mag said, and I
Got it.
just trust them more. Into the Army and served in the Pacific Theater in World War II.
Okay.
He came home, continued with the Pasadena Playhouse. During a production there, he met Lola Lynn Priddle, who came from a very religious family, and they, fell in love, got married, etc. But he didn't get along with his in-laws because they were very religious, and he was, I guess, an unabashed cursor. So before I go further with Jack, I want to pull back a little bit and give some context of what was going on around Jack at this time. Because I know for me, it was a surprise when I learned that Los Angeles is actually like the birthplace of American evangelicism.
Huh.
Because to me, Los Angeles is like very liberal, very
Yeah.
like lots of new religious movements, but like a lot of
Yeah.
like, I don't know, we're carrying crystals around in our pockets and
Yeah.
having vibes. I don't know, like that
Which
sort of
is
thing.
like, to that being said, it also kind of makes sense because people do so much, like the way you're saying, like that people are doing so much like religious experimentation.
Yes. And
And
yeah.
that can go so many different ways. Like that is like, I feel like that's like the epicenter of like Jewish Buddhism is in Los Angeles or is like on the West Coast, or like New Age Judaism is kind of like a ton of people in Los Angeles and West Coast in general. But also like New Age stuff, definitely lots to be said, basically lots to be said about how so much New Age stuff is just repackaged Christianity.
Yes.
In many, many ways, which is why I have a lot of qualms with people talking about how like all these people are leaving Christianity, when it's easy to say, oh, I'm just not a Christian anymore, but you don't really like, you people take all that stuff with them into other things. So anyway, it's a long form way of saying I am so interested to know about how evangelicalism came out of Los Angeles, because that is something I did not know at all.
Yes, and it's I actually got my first like clue of this through there's a podcast called Oh No, Ross and Carrie, and they both the hosts grew up Christian evangelical, and one of them and now they're not, and they go and try out different new religious groups and stuff, like they like join Scientology, like the whole 9 yards. But one of them grew up like outside Los Angeles in this like sort of bubble of evangelicism, which when I first heard that I was like, oh, that's interesting, and then I learned more. So at the turn of the 20th century, Los Angeles was predominantly white and Protestant. Of course, we're talking about the white American settlement that is Los Angeles. But it was jokingly called Iowa by the Sea. But that started to change. In the 1920s and 30s, Mexican, Chinese, Japanese, Jewish, and Black communities started bringing their various religious traditions with them and founding places of worship in Los Angeles. It's a lot of reasons for this. There was a lot of economic upheaval, of course, in the 20s and 30s. California was supposed to be this like golden land of opportunity. How much that actually was, is a whole area of study.
Of course. Yep.
But that was the idea. That's like, that's why everybody was leaving Oklahoma and going to California during the Great Depression and so forth. So all of this variety exposed the population to different ideas, making them more willing to hear new ideas, which is so it's exactly what you were saying about how Los Angeles is known for being very, I put spiritual with like little tildes on either side, like spiritual.
Ooh,
like
yeah, with some stars and crystals and stuff.
Yeah, so spiritual in that sort of like broader sense.
Uh-huh.
And it's out of this sort of soup of religious diversity that evangelicism emerges.
Yeah.
And some historians argue that it is Los Angeles's most successful export, even more so than Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty funny. Yeah. It probably shouldn't be funny, but it is a little bit funny.
It's just a little surprising, I think, when one knows more about like the current Los Angeles, which is not sort of a hotbed of evangelical Christianity.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Not in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are two main forces that drove the emergence of evangelicism in Los Angeles. The first was and I might be pronouncing this wrong, the Azusa Street Revival from 1906 to 1913 that popularized Pentecostalism, and the creation of the Bible Institute of Los Angeles in 1908.
Aha.
So William J. Seymour arrived in Los Angeles in 1906. Julia Hutchins and a group of like-minded Baptists had invited Seymour after they had split with their local church over doctrine. And they believed in baptism of the Holy Spirit and emotionalism, like speaking in tongues. And that stuff was basically, it wasn't just accepted, it was emphasized. They were called the Apostolic Faith Mission. What was sort of interesting was at first these Pentecostal churches were racially integrated.
Oh, wow.
Journalist Frank Bartleman wrote in his diary that through the revival, quote, the color line was washed away in the blood.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But as these things tend to do, they broke off into a bunch of different churches, largely along color lines. But it just created this really, there was this really big movement of what we now just see as really this Pentecostal, very dramatic sort of Christianity, and this very like personal Christianity. It's also that also brings this sort of idea of finding new and interesting ways of reaching out to new potential members.
All right. I see where this is going.
Yes. So this is where we're going to bring Jack Chick back in, because he gets pulled in by one of these sort of new, interesting ideas of how to bring people in to the Pentecostal faith. Jack Chick and Lola Priddle, they get married in 1948, and on their honeymoon, they went to visit her family in Canada, and they forced him to listen to the Charles E. Fuller radio show, The Old-Fashioned Revival Hour.
Oh.
And was apparently converted on the spot.
Okay.
So Charles E. Fuller was not the first radio evangelicist, but he was like among the first, like, there were like 5 of them or whatever. He was also based in Los Angeles, and initially he was broadcasting just his church services on the radio, but he was fired from his church because he was more focused on his radio audience than the in-person audience, which is where he created the Old-Fashioned Revival Hour, which was basically a church service. And I think it even like all the way like with altar calls and stuff. So this is like very common in this sort of style of worship, is at the end there's this like, who wants to dedicate themselves to Jesus, called an altar call.
For sure.
And I don't 100% understand like when you can go do this, because it seems like people do this more than once. Like they'll go to like multiple things with altar calls, and they'll like rededicate themselves to Jesus. I guess.
I think you can do it whenever you want. Yeah.
I think this is one of those things that, like, because my first and most intense sort of exposure to Christianity I had was Catholicism, where you do that once and then you're done. You did it. And you absolutely do not do it again. I get the feeling that this Radio Hour had some sort of thing like that, and he decided he was converted. He was so dedicating his life to Jesus.
I mean, okay, so I guess you dedicating. Sometimes I guess it's like a rededication, like
I did something
renew their
bad or
vows.
something.
Yeah, and you like if you need to get saved, I think some people feel like they need to get saved multiple times or healed. And it really depends on the church, I think. Like
Yeah, and it tends to
yeah.
be a very like emotionally manipulative
Yeah.
thing, and
Yeah.
I say that like in a neutral way, because like you know I've been to Jewish services that were very emotionally manipulative, but it was to the
Definitely.
purpose of being really excited about the end of Yom Kippur, you know, like
It's a whole thing. I mean, yeah, it probably depends a lot on the sect. I mean, the ones I'm obviously that are springing to mind, of course, are the more emotionally manipulative ones for sure. It's like, yeah, with yeah, you know,
yeah.
yeah.
So Jack Chick, he's converted and he goes back to Los Angeles and becomes disillusioned with the film industry because of their treatment of women. I could not figure out what exactly that treatment of women was that he was so offended by.
Okay. Well,
There's plenty to choose from at that time. I mean,
there was plenty to choose from for sure, for sure.
he got a job as a technical illustrator at Astro Science Corporation. And he wanted to be a missionary. Like, he was ready. He's like, I've converted. I'm going to bring souls to Christ. Like, he was ready to go.
Right.
And his wife wouldn't let him be a missionary because her aunt had seen someone's leg bit off by an alligator on a mission trip, which I only included because it's such a wild story.
That's so funny. That's so good.
I mean, sorry for that guy. It sounds like a really
Sorry
bad
for that
dad.
guy, but that is like there is something very funny about that.
And for some reason, Jack Chick was petrified of public speaking, which I have a little bit of a hard time squaring with the fact that he was an actor. I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like he was okay, like with scripts that he had been given, or if something changed for him. But nonetheless, public speaking was out.
Okay.
And that's what most people did to spread the word. They, stand on a street corner or whatever and tell people about it. But then he learned something. He learned about the Chinese Communist Party's use of comics to spread their message and was inspired. Yeah, there is some twists and turns here. So I was like, what is this? So I had to like do quite a bit of research that involved actually going to like that. There's a Facebook group called PDFs for people without institutional access or something.
Yeah, it's a great group. Wonderful.
Yeah,
group.
I ended up having to go there. Usually I don't have to because the Free Library of Philadelphia has JSTOR. So if anybody doesn't know this, if you have a library card, probably anywhere, but definitely in Philadelphia, you have access to JSTOR and a lot of other things, but I did not have access to what I needed. So big ups to the people there. So there was basically what he was learning about, because I was like, what is this? There was a big turning point in genre in China around comics and art and so forth during the Japanese invasion of China during the Second Sino-Japanese War. So it's 1937, 1945. This was something that I know I didn't learn a lot about in high school. I didn't learn about it until I took a modern China class in college. And I had to read The Good Man of Nanjing, which I highly recommend to anyone who has not read or does not know very much about the Sino-Japanese War. It's a fascinating book, and it is as emotionally raw to read up on the invasion of China during that time as it is to read up on the Holocaust. Like it's the same level. It's rough. So at that time, Japan was dropping propaganda across northern China, and Chinese resistance groups started using the format to encourage resistance against Japan.
All right.
And so this sort of tidbit kind of found its way over to Jack Chick, and he was like, I can do comics. I like to draw. Let's do it. So he starts doodling comics, and his first work, which he self-published, is called Why No Revival.
Okay.
And he published it with a loan from his credit union in 1961. And this tract is geared predominantly towards other Christians. It's not really meant for the outside community. And it's basically just coming for the church and being like, here's all these things that are wrong with the church today.
Okay.
Wow, okay. The thunderstorm part just got to me. It's weird because I could hear the thunder on your
Oh, it's
end,
so
and
weird.
it just
It
happened
has
over my
just
house.
moved from South Philly to West Philly because it left me.
Yeah,
I hear a little
yeah.
thunder, but it's by you now.
Yes. Yeah, so that was his first tract. He did that, felt good. He was driving around and he saw I wrote rebellious youths, mostly for my own amusement.
Yeah.
But he saw some teenagers being teenagers, which inspired him to draw his second work, which is not one of his more popular ones. Why No Revival is still very popular. This one is not. It's called A Demon's Nightmare. And it is about this kid who finds Jesus, and it's pretty fantastic because it's like he's going around his world and there's actual literal like demons walking around saying things like, completely absurd things. What is it?
It's bizarre. And what
looking
year
to
was
his
this
mother,
again?
the kid's praying, and this demon is talking to his mom, saying, "Mother, isn't that a disgusting scene?" Just very unsubtle.
That's unsettling. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I've been looking in. Is this directed toward children?
yes,
I imagine. Yeah.
yes.
And what
This
what
one in
year?
particular
What year
is
is it?
I think 62. Let me double
Okay.
check. I don't have a Demon's Nightmare listed, but it would be between 61 and 64.
Got it.
So he makes these two works, and it gets the attention of his boss, wherever it was, Astro Science Corporation, named George Otis, and he thought it was just great. He's like, this is fantastic, and so he bankrolls the printing of that work and then another one which was his big success. This is his like big break, 1964.
Yeah.
It's called This Was Your Life.
Okay.
And this one was interesting for me because weirdly, I know this one because it's literally the first one of Jack Chick's tracks that was given to me. And I remember it because I remember walking, it's like you have these memories that are just very like visceral for no good reason sometimes. I remember walking down the street with my friend in college who was raised Catholic, and there's this scene where the protagonist is looking around a wall at like a sexy lady and going like, ooh, nice. And my friend thought that was like a really absurd way of demonstrating that. And there's also a part where he's sitting in church thinking about how much of a waste of time being in church was, to which both of us thought was absurd because like he's a grown-up. Like if he thinks
that's
that
really
church
funny.
is a waste of time, then why
Don't
is he
go.
there? Yeah. Like just don't go.
It's also funny to think about how this is like in the era kind of, I guess, of like psychedelics and comics also. Just like comics are probably getting pretty big around this time. What is the word? Okay, so it's probably a decade later or so, but oh my gosh, there's a famous comic strip artist. Oh, it's going to come to me. God damn it. I had like a smart thing to say, but I don't anymore. So
maybe it'll come back.
Crumb.
Crumb
artist. Robert Crumb, when did he alive? When was he alive? He was born in 1943, and
so a little younger, but like
he's a little younger, but okay,
but definitely in the same like.
I imagine they're coming out of like this is an era where there's like a lot of psychedelic shit, a lot of comic shit. It's not surprising that yes, it's conservative, but so were a lot of hippies. And
oh yeah, no, there was a whole class of hippies that like left the whole like Woodstock thing and started like Christian cult commune things. Like there's a whole variety of those. These early works, they established a template, which was sin, damnation, and then sometimes, but not always, the possibility of redemption.
Got it.
And
Not always.
I was immediately reminded of something that I studied in college called the medieval morality play. So we're going to play a
Ooh.
game. We're going to play a game,
Okay.
Issa.
Okay.
I'm
Oh
going to
gosh.
read
Okay.
you a quote from a chick tract and a quote from a medieval morality play.
Okay.
And I want you to see if you can tell which one's which.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Let's do it.
So here's the first one.
Okay.
Whoremonger, hater of God, whisperer, theft, lies, disobedient to parents, false accuser, pride, unmerciful, backbiter, envy, deceit, hypocrisy. Why didn't someone warn me about all this? For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. What can I say? I'm lost, without hope, without Christ. I'm guilty, guilty. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Open the book of life, his name does not appear, Lord. Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels, and these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. So that's
Okay.
example
All right.
one.
That's number one. Okay. Okay.
Here's number two.
All right.
Ye hearers, take it of worth old and young, and forsake pride, for he deceiveth you in the end. And remember beauty, 5 wits, strength, and discretion. They all at last do every man forsake. For his good deeds there doth he take. But beware, and they may be small, before God he hath no help at all. None excuse may be there for every man. Alas, how shall he do then? For after mercy amends no man make, and for mercy and pity do him forsake.
Oh
Yeah.
goodness. Okay. So my mind immediately goes to the second one being medieval, and the first one being our friend Jack Chick.
You're right. I think
Okay.
the big
Okay.
giveaway on the second one is that it's in rhyming couplets.
And Jack Chick did not
No.
forsooth. Yeah. I don't know what
Yes.
forsooth is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so the second one is from a medieval morality play called Everyman,
Okay.
which follows a very similar plot to this particular chick tract. This Was Your Life. Because This Was Your Life, the protagonist dies and he goes to wherever to be judged, and he finds out he sees all these things that he's done that are bad, like be lustful or hate sitting in church or whatever.
Yeah.
And that happens, and God is like, okay, you're going to hell, sorry, have a nice life. And in Everyman it's the same thing. Like Everyman goes around and interacts with all of these like personifications of the deadly sins.
Whoa.
And at the end he goes to hell.
Oh
and
my
it's a
gosh.
bad time.
Oof.
Yeah, and it's really like, and I purposely picked like 2 sections that had basically the same message of like,
Yeah. It's the
you
same.
sinned, you're going
Yeah.
to hell.
Yeah.
It's very the same, except no rhyming couplets. Like that's the difference. So Jack Chick keeps on making comics in his kitchen. I don't know why
Okay.
that was an important thing, but that shows up a lot, that he was doing it at his kitchen table.
Okay.
And
all right.
he was finally able to self-finance Chick publications in 1970. So they're selling enough of these things to be, liquid or whatever. That same year, Billy Graham held his Honor America Day to support Richard Nixon and explicitly married the idea of God and country. So the rally, this is Billy Graham's rally, was keeping alive the push to bring God into government, which was sort of started in the 1950s with like the Red Scare and so forth, which did things like added "In God We Trust" onto money, and "Under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. And also in face of court decisions restricting school-sponsored prayer in public schools, which is, if anybody wants to look it up, Engel v. Vitale, which is 1962. So this basically said, this is the court decision that said kids can pray in school, but it cannot be led by a teacher.
Okay.
Which,
so why would, okay, but like why would they, I almost feel like it's confusing because it's like on the one hand, all this God stuff is being introduced, and it's obviously like a pretty Christian God, and on the other hand, they're not praying in school. So
Right,
does
that's the
that
point. So
mean?
they're upset about the not praying in school. So it's sort of
Oh,
like what we're
oh,
seeing.
okay,
It's sort of
okay,
like what
okay,
we're
okay.
seeing now, where
Yeah,
for a while there was a lot of things that were like good for queer kids in
yeah,
schools, and then we are now living through this moment of backlash. It was like that.
yeah. I see. That makes
Yes.
sense.
This
Yay.
isn't actually important to Jack Chick, but I thought it was interesting. I thought you would also find it personally interesting.
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
This
uh-huh.
is where we start getting the concept of Judeo-Christian tradition,
Ooh. Oi.
which was an attempt to reach like religious consensus, creating the silent majority. And this is sort of like bringing Jews into the fold of religion in America and whiteness and white Jews,
Mm,
obviously,
mm, mm.
um, and so forth, which has nothing to do with Jack Chick, but I just find it personally
It
interesting.
is interesting. No, that's fascinating.
And there's also a lot of worry among mainline Protestants because their numbers are shrinking and conservative churches are growing,
Yeah.
which is also this thing that you were talking about earlier that's been kind of bouncing around TikTok,
Yeah.
of this report that came out saying
Yeah.
that Christianity is the numbers are going down, but when you actually look at where those numbers are going down, they're going down in liberal churches, and they
Yeah.
are either staying the same or going up in hyper conservative churches.
Yeah. It's really bugging me. Next time somebody tells you, it's my PSA. Next time somebody tells you that they're really excited because everybody's leaving the Christian church, you can tell them, A, there's no such thing as the Christian church because Christian sects are literally so different from them that we literally fight wars that are ongoing today that have never ended. Like, people kill each other over this shit constantly.
Oh
And
yeah.
number two, there on a more practical note, there's no reason to celebrate because I don't know about the numbers in evangelical churches. I'm pretty sure they're not growing as astronomically as they were a few years
No,
ago, and that
but they're
is
not
good.
losing those
But
people
they're
though.
certainly not losing those people. That is, if that is going down, it is like really, really, really gradual. It is not a huge swath of people leaving the evangelical church. There are a lot of people leaving mainline Protestant, low key, sometimes Catholic, just like UCC, just like super low key churches. And they are all spending more time in nature, apparently, according to one New York Times reader who answered a survey. So anyway, on a less practical but more general note, every time you say that, like, publicly, that you are celebrating the downfall of Christianity, you kind of like give ammunition to alt-right Christian groups. Like, they thrive off on
Yep.
that stuff. Like, they thrive on it. Like, that is their whole reason for being, is, oh my gosh, somebody doesn't like us, blah 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 blah. But when you take this more nuanced approach and you say you guys suck for all of these reasons, but not just because you're Christian, you suck because you're misogynist, rapist, homophobic, transphobic, genocidal assholes. That's how to attack it. Don't you know what I mean? Like, otherwise it's all gonna fire right back on you. So
Yeah,
that's my
and
major PSA.
and also
um,
recognizing that like once people are in that bubble, it is truly a bubble. I have had a conversation over and over with people I interact with in the world that I'm happy to have this conversation
yeah,
over and over about what exactly, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but what exactly
yeah,
gender affirming care is for a child.
mm-hmm.
So not somebody who's like 16, 17, 18, for like a 10-year-old. Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
gender affirming care? And there's a lot of misinformation out there.
It's a
And
lot
what
of
I was finding
misinformation.
people were saying to me was that like they didn't really care one way or the other, like about people who want to be one gender or the other, for trans people or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm trying to like to rewrite the quotes that are in my head, because as you might imagine, in these conversations it's not the way we say things. But
yeah, yeah.
um the but there's concern about children not being developmentally able to make permanent decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I will explain to them that nobody is doing that.
Right.
And then the like 100% of the time the walkaway is, oh, okay, yeah. Your gender affirming care is calling a kid by their preferred name and preferred
Right.
pronouns and letting
Right.
them wear the clothes they want.
Right.
Okay, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
great.
There's this idea,
yeah.
there's this idea that like as a whole, there's like 70% of this country or like 60% of this country is just immune to facts and they're like immune to these types of things, which is not necessarily true. A lot of people just
No.
have the wrong facts or
Yes.
literally just don't know trans people or they don't know Jews. So they don't know like, like there's a lot like that does not go for every oppressed group. Like most people like have enough facts to say that racism or slavery is bad or something like that. But a lot of people, but when it comes to like very small minority groups like trans folks and Jews, like for things like that, like a lot of the time they really just don't have the facts. Like they've never met a Jew in their life or like,
and if
like,
and
yeah,
to be clear, like people from those marginalized identities, if you don't have the energy to have those conversations, you do not have to.
you don't have to.
But
No.
if you are in a position to be able to have that conversation, it's important.
Yeah. Some of us will do it all the time. Ben will do it. Ben will go out of his way to find people and then
I've traveled through the deep south with Ben, and
you have
I
to be
will
on your
never
you have to be on your toes.
never forget the moment when somebody spilled a bunch of change on the ground and
Oh,
he
this
made
is
a
his
Jew
favorite
joke.
thing to do. It's his
Yeah.
favorite thing to do. He
And I
does
was
it
like,
here too.
and I was
He
like,
does it here in Philly too.
Ben, we are in like rural Alabama, sir. But so
he thinks
to
it's
bring it back,
he thinks it is so funny. And I'm like, you know what? If I beat on him too hard for this, then I am depriving a Jew of his joy. So
yes.
I don't want to let him have this.
And if you give him a chance to talk, he does have like a reason he does it, and
He has
there's
it's a whole
praxis
thing.
to it and so forth.
Yep.
But like, and all this actually does kind of relate because this is all about like this
Good.
bubble. And well,
Yeah.
because here's the thing: is a lot of us laugh at these chick tracts.
Yeah.
You get this chick track, and you're like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like when you're inside the bubble, you don't necessarily know how like other people react to things.
Yeah.
And Jack Chick is solidly in the bubble.
Yeah, this is so funny because I just that's my last like, little details that I literally got one of these like last week for the first time. This has not happened to me before, and now we're here, and I'm like, this is fascinating because I had no idea. I was like, this is weird.
Do you know which
like,
one it was, or did you just chuck it?
Oh, I chucked it. I
mean, that's
chucked
what I
it.
do with them too.
I wasn't in the mood. I wasn't in the mood.
That's real.
There are other days. There are other days where I would have been like fascinating, but and then there are
yeah.
days where like somebody comes up to me and they're really aggressive, and I'll be like, "I'm Jewish, thank you." But most times I'll just like kind of take it and move on. And
yeah, working in tourism, trust me, I have a lot of stories along those lines. There's also, so around this time, this is 1971, there's also just in general a lot of interest in Jesus in popular culture. So this is 1971, Jesus Christ Superstar starts its run. There is, we talked about this a little bit before, these sort of like hippie-esque like street preacher types. They're called the Jesus movement in Southern California. And there's also a lot of celebrity converts to Christianity at this time.
Oh, all right.
1972, Jack Chick hires another artist. He's a Black artist named Fred Carter. And his job is to do full-sized, full-color comic books. But his name was kept off of the comic books for a long time. But people knew there was somebody else there because he's a way better artist than Jack Chick. And I mentioned that he's Black because it does come in later as an important piece. At this point, it doesn't actually matter very much one way or the other.
And so what you're saying is that he was not doing this for representation.
No, he's a true believer.
And diversity. he's what?
Yeah, and Fred Carter's a true believer. Like he's on board.
Oh, I mean, you have to be. You have to be. Yeah.
So people like noticed that there was somebody else drawing these, but didn't know who it was. And they were kind of curious. As you might imagine, there's a little bit of a cult following with these things. Yeah. And so up to this point, things are going really well for chick tracts. They're being carried in a lot of like Christian bookstores and things like that. But the 1980s roll around and things start to change.
Okay.
Christian bookstores are getting uncomfortable with carrying the comics, and a lot of them stopped carrying them, and there's a bunch of reasons for this.
Why?
One is there's some people who thought, well, okay, Jack Chick, when he was asked about this, why Christian bookstores weren't carrying his comics anymore, he said it was because they thought that talking about the gospel in comic form was sacrilegious. And I'm sure somebody said that to him at some point, because that sounds on brand. However, in addition, his comics present a very specific view on Christianity, one that is anti-Catholic and anti-Semitic. And that was just not playing well for places like the Christian Booksellers Association, who don't, at least not in that sort of very obvious way, peddle in those things. We can have an argument about whether they peddle those things or not, but certainly not in these like really obvious ways.
Yeah.
He also published a series of books that were based on the conspiracy theories of Alberto Riviera that were explicitly anti-Catholic. I don't know if you know this guy. He's interesting. I didn't know him before either. So Riviera claimed to be a former Catholic priest who had left Catholicism to speak out about the church's supposed plans for world domination, as well as its involvement in the Holocaust and the Jonestown Massacre and the rise of communism.
Wait, the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Oh, haha. That's
yeah.
Oop. Well,
yep.
You know, that was somebody else's fault.
Yes. He also publicly supported the ministry of Tony Alamo, who I'm not going to go into, but he is Bad News Bears.
Somebody commented on my video the other day that the Catholic Church was involved in the Holocaust. And let me just say that maybe there are things that happened that I do not know the full extent of, but Catholics were like super oppressed during the Holocaust. So I don't know about the Catholic Church itself, but I don't think that this sounds like it's not correct. That's
as I understand it, and this is based on like how it's presented at like Holocaust Museum in DC.
Yeah.
My understanding is it's more of a like kind of like the United States, where it was like they just didn't do anything.
Right. It's not like they came in and saved everybody. Like they were not like the super good guys, but it was about like United States level of like they were not
like we don't actually like they didn't actually care very much.
No.
But they weren't like coming up with the ideas.
Yeah. But people should know that like Catholic churches, like you could not go to church anymore as a Catholic.
Oh, there's a reason why in southern Germany there was like a lot of like anti-Nazi sentiment, and it was because everybody down there is Catholic.
Yeah, weird times. So yeah, there's conspiracy theories that are still very rampant about like, yeah, the Catholic Church was not out there collecting Jews for the Nazis.
No.
No.
There's other things, but
they were doing really bad things at that time, which we can definitely
but that's just not. That's just not.
But it wasn't that, right? That wasn't one of them.
And also, like with communism, like during the rise of communism, as it were, like they were really explicitly like not in favor of that.
Oh, yeah, they would not be.
Yeah, and so Tony Alamo, he also this Riviera guy, like was hanging out with. Oh no, I'm sorry. Jack Chick also supported Tony Alamo. Tony Alamo is an LA-based cult leader. He's in prison for felony child abuse and theft of his late wife's corpse. So, not a good guy.
Right. Man, that's a lot.
Yes. He also made a comic that was an anti-witchcraft comic called Spellbounds that were based on the allegations of, quote, former Grand Druid, end quote, Johnny Todd, who claimed that Satanists throughout the United States were routinely engaging in human sacrifice, which was not a thing that was happening.
Not a thing.
This was Satanic Panic.
Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, as you might imagine, just lots of homophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Hindu sentiment, just all that stuff. So in the 80s, there's this backlash within Christianity that's like we're not doing this.
Right.
So a lot of churches that were not specifically in this like extreme space moved away from Chick Publications. It's also around that time that Chick Publications Oh, actually, I don't know if it was around that time. I couldn't figure out when this happened. The SPLC considers chick publications a hate group.
Word.
Which I didn't know until I did this research.
Yeah.
I agree.
SPLC
But
has such a wonderful website.
yeah.
I mean, wonderful in that you will not have fun there.
No, but very, very
but you will find out important things and you'll say, wow, so many more people are kind of Nazi-ish than I thought, is what you're going to say. Yeah.
1990s Jack Chick becomes something of a recluse. Like, he's getting attacked a lot for being in favor of these people
kind of
who
a dick.
are completely bananas.
Yeah.
And so he becomes something of a recluse. In 2006, Chick Publications had Fred Carter. Remember him? He was the good artist. Yeah, Chick Publications had Fred Carter write comics specifically for the Black community with Black characters that were literally just like redos of old stuff.
Wow.
And they are interesting.
Oh, okay.
In 2014, a movie was made of the tract Dark Dungeons, which decries the evils of D&D as well as tarot cards and homosexuality.
We're still doing that? We're still doing the D&D is evil thing? Okay.
Hang on. The people making the movie were making fun of the tract.
Okay.
But they got permission from Chick Publications to do it because they didn't change any of the language. They faithfully represented what was in the tract. So even though they were doing it as like, let's laugh at this, Chick Publications still gave them like the legal blessing for them to distribute.
So it's like kind of like a Book of Mormon sort of situation.
Even more so than that. It's more like I think this is just shows that bubble we're talking about, right? So Chick Publications, I think in their mind is like, okay, so whatever these people think they are doing, if you genuinely believe that what you wrote in that tract is going to bring people into, a relationship with Jesus or whatever, then the fact that these people were doing it as a joke doesn't matter because they did exactly what was on the page.
Oh, bizarre.
And 2016, Jack Chick died.
Okay.
But
goodbye.
His work remains popular. It's been translated into numerous languages, is handed out across the world. Mark Knoll and Christian Nystrom in Christianity Today, in writing about Jack Chick, wrote that, and I wanted to quote them because this is not a very nice quote, and I want to be clear that they said it and not me. They said that Jack Chick represented the world of ordinary non-learned evangelicals. Which I think is one of those things where it's like, I see what you're saying. I think that is a way of not bringing people into the conversation because you're calling them stupid.
Yeah. That's not like helpful.
No. But they've stayed popular for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
First of all, they're easy reads.
Mm-hmm.
You can read one in like a minute if you are a good reader. They are super cheap.
Or free.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're an evangelical who's purchasing these to give out. So, like, if you want to buy them not in bulk, so like when I say not in bulk, I mean like get like 10 of them or something.
Okay, right.
It's 21 cents per comic. And if you get them in bulk, which is like in the hundreds or thousands, they go down to 11 cents per.
Wow.
And they speak really directly about some of the Christian right's greatest concerns. So these are very, very dramatically speaking out against like gay people and religions that are not Christianity, like impeding upon the schools. Like I when I opened up Chick Tract just now, like at the beginning, to kind of give you an example, just on the landing page, they're advertising one that's called Allah Had No Son. Oy. So like these very much speak to the fears of people who are in the Christian right.
Yeah.
So like I said before, it's popular to hand these out as a quote unquote tip to service workers, given out at Halloween instead of candy, put in elevators. They have like a little guide of where you should leave these things.
Wow.
In bathrooms and things like that. It's inspired a lot of copycats.
Tip your service workers. Don't give them right-wing Christian fundamentalist cartoons.
This is
Just
why I always
please
tip a little
don't.
more,
I usually tip a little more.
just
Yeah.
to make up for the person who's going to give them
Yeah.
a tip
Yeah.
track.
Yeah. Yeah. You never know when it will happen. You never know. Comics are also just such a good way of imparting information. It is. I realized I have been amassing a collection of nonfiction, historical, graphic novels without trying. They have just been. I have just been coming. They have been coming to me, and I have one. I have the Berlin one. I have one about economic history. It's like slightly Marxist economic history, which is really fun. I just got Star Trek, George Takei's graphic novel about when he and his family were in internment camp.
He also did a musical about it.
The graphic novel is great. It's so good. I would love to see the musical, but it's
I haven't seen
fantastic.
it, but I have the album.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Obviously I have Persepolis, which I forgot is even in this category. I have Kent State. It just was delivered to the wrong address, so I don't have it, but it's down it's down the street at a doctor's office. So I have to go and pick it up. It's been like 3 months. They're like, why do I still have this weird fucking graphic novel? Because it is graphic. That's a graphic one when it puts the graphic and graphic novel.
Well, yeah. And I mean, like you said, it's like a really good way of imparting information. It's part of why, like, I think some of these Back to Moms for Liberty we were talking to at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think one of the books that some of the groups are trying to ban is Mouse.
Yeah.
Which, if people are not familiar, is a graphic novel about the Holocaust, but it's like mice instead of people.
Yeah.
And it's like literally the artist's like father, grandfather, somebody in his family's story.
Yeah. It is, and Ben has that one at home, and I reread it in 8th grade, like a lot of kids do. And
I actually have not read it.
Oh, it's. I mean, you'll have criticisms of it, like you'll
of course.
like any book in the world, but like to ban it is a straight up act of Holocaust denial. Like there is nothing. There's literally no other.
Well, I mean, they're also trying to ban like the Diary of Anne Frank.
So it's Holocaust denial. It is yeah, there's literally nothing else to it. It is. And people who deny the Holocaust usually want the Holocaust to happen. So again, so that is what it is.
It speaks to the power of these sort of simple ways of giving out information. This is something I'm really passionate about because I consider myself a public historian, and this is essentially what I do, right? Like I take these very complex topics and I condense them into a hopefully entertaining, bite-sized. I mean, this is a longer form that we do with the podcast, but like when I'm doing tours, like I'm taking these like big ideas and making them a 5-minute shtick, you know?
Yeah.
And I personally think I really feel the pressure to
get it right,
do that well.
Yeah.
That is important to me because you make choices when you do that, whether you like it or not, and that's what these things are doing. And it's we're living through a time, and this is a time that's been in the works since, I mean, I brought us back to the early 1900s in Los Angeles, but that's where a lot of this started. And Jack Chick got this idea from the Chinese Communist Party,
which is fascinating.
Which is something that he was not in favor of.
And I guess they got the idea.
They got it
from
the Japanese
invaders, which is crazy.
Right. So
which makes sense because I don't actually don't let me do a little tail off spin off. But if I may, if I were going to, what I would say is that comics as we know it originated kind of basically in Japan, or near there with Hokkaido block prints. But I take out the Hokkaido part because I don't know. But a lot of never mind. You can take all of this out, but because I have to. But a lot of comics as we know it were inspired by Japanese block prints.
Yeah, so I don't know anything about that. But what I was going to say was that we can use this too.
Yeah.
We being,
And
forces of good. I'm gonna go ahead and put ourselves in that category.
some of us do. I actually
Yeah.
have I think I've mentioned to my followers, but I forgot if it's in general. I have the German edition of the Antifa comic book. The English
Yes.
edition was supposed to arrive today. It was supposed to arrive at 2:15, and then I reloaded the USPS, and then it said 3:35, and then I reloaded at 3:35, and now it says unknown, but it's out for delivery, and I want it so bad. I want it to be in my possession. So I do have the Antifa comic book coming soon, and when it does come, I will be sharing a lot of it with everybody, which I'm very excited about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very
And I think
excited.
this is also like we can use this stuff. And I also think this is why it's important to have conversations, because if people are getting these if people are getting their information from this sort of space,
Yeah.
then I mean, we need to give them information that is correct, because this
Yeah.
is, the most people don't want to be hateful. Most people
Yeah.
just want to live their lives and want other people to live their lives. And if they're being fed stuff like this that tells them that there's something they need to be really scared of, they'll be really scared.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, like, just even as a really intellectually curious person, sometimes my life is busy and I'll see a TikTok about something that will get me upset,
Yeah.
and I don't have the time and energy to do any real research around it. And
Yeah.
because of what I do, I'm able to recognize, like, okay, so I'm not going to repeat this. But
Right.
that's just because of my profession.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's no slam on people who don't realize that. And
Right. Right.
that's what all this basically is. That's what
Right.
chick tracts are. And that's
Right.
a lot of what we're seeing. And so if you have a platform, it's really important to, if you're able to, like, bring the correct information out.
Yeah.
And make it digestible by your
Yeah.
audience.
And same goes for, like, I mean, the easiest thing to do is always to look for the cited source. Like, have they brought up a piece of historical information? And if so, did they cite their source? And that's already the easiest way. And then, like, if you need to, you can follow that. If you want to, extra credits, follow that source and determine if it's in a reliable piece of media. A quick and dirty way, though, is to see if people cite a source at all, because usually the people that cite sources, that's not always true, but, like, it's a large difference from people that don't cite them at all. That's advanced placement if you want to go into and determine if you think that the data is being mined and analyzed in the accurate way. Often it is not, but, like, when people don't cite their sources at all, you can't believe there's no way to believe what they're saying.
Yeah, or if they don't
there's
say
literally
it,
no way.
if you follow up with them and say, hey, where is your source?
Yeah.
They say, oh, it's this.
Right, exactly.
Because sometimes people are lazy.
Yeah, sometimes people are lazy.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. But, like, basically, this goes for comic books. Like, they're very, like, a comic book as imparting information is incredibly attractive, and there's a lot of reasons why people are just more given to understand, to going into it or to falling into it. And propaganda posters are similar. And then
Infographics.
Infographics are the most common way that we see this today. Like, Instagram infographics that are just really prettily designed. Like, they better be citing their sources. Like, they have to cite their sources too. And I mean, yeah. And then someone brought that up the other day, like, why don't documentaries have to cite their sources? And, like, honestly, great fucking question, because a lot of them don't.
Yes.
And
a lot of them do.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
sometimes just the way documentary site sources is a little different. But looking at it, I mean,
but, like, if you're watching the History Channel and they're just talking out of their ass sometimes, like they do these days.
Yes.
Or, like, sometimes Netflix puts out, like, idiotic biopics that.
Well, look up who they're talking to.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times documentaries have the expert.
Yeah.
Who is that person?
Right. Yeah. If you're watching Ancient Aliens, definitely don't believe.
Or what was the one? Bible Code. That's.
Oh, I
That's
don't know
a
about
that's
Bible
a
Troll.
trip.
Oh, but Ancient Civilizations is the recent one.
Yes.
I don't know. I
Yes.
don't know. That's
I
not the
have
topic of
a
conversation
I
anymore.
interviewed
But
I interviewed a tour guide who one of the things I ask in my interviews is tell me about something you're passionate about,
yeah,
because I want people who are passionate about things. Like it could be anything. And he went on this tirade
oh
about
my
ancient
god,
civilizations. And I
as
was
he
like, "You
should,
are
as he
hired,
should,
sir."
as he should. Yeah, yeah. That shit was so messed up. That was so messed up. The fact that Netflix published that, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
it's crazy.
and to close it up, I guess if people have interest, I can on social media or whatever, talk a little bit about the ways in which I have these conversations with people that have been effective.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to leave people with like, you should do something, but not how to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's the most important thing we can be doing right now is connecting to people.
I think so too.
And that's the thing that has gotten us out of this mess before. And it's the only thing that's going to get us out of it this time.
Yeah. So if you have the energy for connecting with people, and it a lot of the time takes less energy and emotional labor than you think. Sometimes it's just sitting down and talking to somebody, and not even about the thing that is hard to talk about. It's just building relationships, and that's it, and showing each other that we're human beings, which is so cheesy but true. But it's true. Yeah,
it's true.
So if you're into that stuff, and you want to learn more about it, talk to Fega, talk to me. Follow us at Art in a Democracy, because we talk about this stuff a lot.
There's a lot of people out there doing this work really well.
Hope is not lost.
No, hope is not lost.
Yeah, we're
That's
out
important.
Here.
Also, as a historian, like, we've been here before.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's a foregone conclusion we'll get out of it.
Right.
But it's possible. Yeah. And keep your chin up, take care of yourself, drink water.
Yeah, drink water. Have an orange
naps
if you can.
Yeah.
Oranges really make me happy. I don't know.
If there's nothing wrong if you're feeling overwhelmed to just like watch a comfort show. Like,
absolutely.
We just gotta keep remembering that we're all humans together.
Yeah. I just started community again, as I do every couple months, because sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, stay safe out there, friends. Yes. We'll be back. Oh, I guess I need to do the shtick, huh?
Yeah, you have a fancy closing, like a podcast. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to D-Listers of History. If you enjoyed yourself, be sure to subscribe and drop us a review on whatever platform you listen on. A huge thank you to April Keys for the use of the song Misfit from her album Mountain View. You can find her on all the various social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at D-Listers of History, no hyphens. A big shout out to the folks supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support us and get access to exclusive content, stickers, my rantings, whatever, become a patron of this program. Yay. All this and more can be found on our website, dlistersofhistory.com. Again, no hyphens. And we've got a couple of really exciting episodes coming up in this next month. We have a lot of really cool guests coming up.
Yes, we do.
So get ready for some interesting content, I would hope. Someday I'm going to remember all the things I need to say while in the recording session, but this past recording session was not that day. Our episodes come out on the first and third Mondays of every month, so the next episode will be coming out on August 7th, which is the day before my birthday. So the birthday gift to me you can give me is telling all your friends all about this podcast. There's going to be a special guest on that episode. I'm really excited about it, so be sure to tune in. Okay, and now for an episode-relevant audio drop.
How are each of you working to fructify the Dark One? Report!
Astrology and tarot card sales are pulling more and more young people into the Dark One's domain.
World politics are steadily progressing toward our one world government, naturally with our agents in place.
I am excited to announce that this year more people have decided to be homosexuals than ever before in history.
role-playing games are the perfect gateway to embracing Satan and have spread far and wide across the land.